I'm Zak Bagans, and tonight I'm standing in front of a place that locals refuse to look at, let alone step onto. A farmhouse built in 1894, abandoned in the late 1970s, and surrounded by miles of wheat fields that hide more than they grow. The history is simple. A family lived here, and then a family died here. But what happened beneath this house, that's what turned this land into something predatory. For 50 years, neighbors say the basement door has stayed nailed shut. Not locked, not sealed with cement, nailed shut like someone tried to keep something inside or keep something out. I'm here to find out which one. The wind cuts across the field like a blade as I approach the porch. The farmhouse looms over me, windows dark, roof sagging, porch boards soft like pulp. Every step I take echoes like a warning. The air feels thick, not like humidity, like someone breathing warm air against the back of my neck. I stop. Something shifts inside the house. A slow creak, not a raccoon, not a draft, something heavier. Welcome back, a voice whispers behind the wall. It's impossible. Yet I heard it, clear as a human voice, but stretched like someone trying to remember how to speak. I push the front door open. The hinges scream. Dust falls like ash. The interior smells like wet dirt and something rotten wrapped in plastic. The farmhouse hasn't been touched in decades. Old furniture slumps under sheets of grime. The wallpaper peels in long strips that look like hanging skin. And at the end of the hallway, there it is. The basement door, a heavy wooden door covered in rusted nails hammered into it at odd angles, some bent sideways, some driven in with enough force to splinter the frame. Handwritten chalk symbols are smeared across the wood. Circles, X's, a crudely drawn eye. The whole door throbs with a slow, steady sound. A heartbeat, deep, rhythmic, alive. I feel it through my boots. A vibration that syncs with my pulse, then tries to overtake it. Elias steps in behind me, breathing hard. You feel that, Zak? Yes, stay close. To the left is the living room, and something about that room pulls at me. I walk in, sweeping my flashlight across old furniture. A rocking chair, a shattered mirror, a broken radio. Everything looks frozen in the exact moment the family vanished. A framed photo sits on the mantle. A father, a mother, a boy, a daughter, all smiling, happy. But behind them, behind their bodies, if you look just long enough, there's a faint blur, a dark shape, a smear where no smear should be. Naomi comes up beside me. You see it too, right? Yeah, I say, the shadow behind them. That's not a shadow, she whispers. That's a person hiding in the background. We stare at the photo. We don't blink. We don't breathe. The smear moves. Just a twitch, but enough. Enough to tell us this house isn't empty. My recorder spikes. A hiss splits the air behind us. A long dragging inhale like something gathering itself. We turn. The rocking chair moves once. Forward. Backward. Forward. Don't go near it, I say. But the chair stops before I finish speaking. Frozen again, as if caught in the act. Then, thump, from the basement door. Once, deep, heavy knock. Then another, 2 knocks, 3. The rhythm slows and thickens until it sounds less like knocking and more like something slamming bone against wood. Naomi backs away. Elias steadies his camera. I walk toward the door. Each knock rattles dust from the ceiling. The nails vibrate. A cold draft pushes against the door. Then a voice whimpers from behind it. Please, let me out. The voice is small, familiar, childlike, and that's when I know exactly what's happening. That's not a child, I whisper. It's mimicking. The whimper becomes a cry. Please, it's dark, let me out. It's perfect mimicry, perfect tone, perfect sadness. But behind it, beneath the words, there's another sound. A grown man exhaling. A throat too deep to belong to a kid. The basement door pulses. The nails bend outward like fingers trying to pry themselves free. We move back quickly. Something wants out. Something that shouldn't have a voice at all. I sweep my flashlight around the hallway. The temperature drops fast. My breath becomes fog. We need context. History. Something to explain the thing pretending to be a trapped child. We search the farmhouse room by room. Most doors are shut. But one room on the second floor opens easily. The master bedroom. Dust coats everything. The bed is still made. But on the far wall, something's carved deep into the plaster. 6 words, scratched by fingernails or something sharper. Do not open what we sealed. Below the message, a dark stain trails from the floorboards toward the hallway. Not blood, but something thick and blackened by age. Naomi speaks first. What did they seal? The cellar, I say. The basement. The air presses against us, heavy, sour, electric. Elias swallows hard. Zak, we shouldn't open it. I look at him, and for a moment, I agree. There are places in the world meant to stay silent. Sleepers meant to stay asleep. But this house isn't silent anymore. This thing isn't asleep. It's awake, hungry, learning, and it knows we're here. A whisper curls up the stairs like smoke, not a voice, a rasp, inhuman, trying to shape a word, trying to say my name. Zak. I freeze. My blood runs cold. It knows me. It remembers me. And whatever is beneath that basement door has waited a very, very long time for someone to listen. The whisper of my name fades, swallowed by the walls. But the house doesn't return to silence. Silence implies rest. This place is anything but resting. Something under the boards shifts its weight. A creak runs along the support beams like a spine flexing. Naomi backs against the bedroom doorway, her breath quick and shallow. Zak, if it knows your name already. I know, I tell her. But leaving won't fix this. Not anymore. We head back down the hallway, our footsteps sending hollow echoes through the floor. Every board feels thin, too thin, as if the whole house is just a shell stretched over something breathing underneath. When we reach the stairwell, Elias stops dead. Zak, look. A crack now runs down the inside of the wall, from ceiling to floor. It's fresh, still shedding plaster dust. As if something pushed from the inside. The house is splitting open. We descend carefully. Halfway down, all 3 of us hear it. A dragging sound, slow, wet, like something pulling itself across concrete with elbows instead of legs. It's coming from the basement. I grip the railing tighter and force myself to keep moving. At the bottom of the stairs, the hallway feels different, thicker, as if the oxygen is being stolen out of the air and replaced with something stagnant. The basement door sits at the end, still nailed, still splintered, still breathing. Elias raises his thermal camera. Zak, you need to see this. On his screen, the basement door glows cold blue. But around it, wrapping the frame, coiling under the floorboards, is a pulsing heat signature. A shape the size of a man, then the size of 2, then stretching, elongating into something wrong. What is that? Naomi whispers. It's not human, Elias says. His voice cracks. A whisper rises from behind the wood. A low, rhythmic chant. Not English. Not any language that belongs in a place like this. The wood pulses, the nails groan, and then, clear as day, a soft voice murmurs. Zak, come open the door. I feel my stomach tighten. It's my voice. Perfect. Exact. Like someone recorded me and played it back through a mouth that isn't shaped right. Naomi clamps a hand over her mouth. Zak, it's mimicking you now. Yeah, I whisper. I know. Something pushes against the door. A heavy, slow push that bulges the wood outward. Naomi and Elias both stumble backward, but I take a step forward. Not reckless, not brave, just compelled. This house wants something, and I need to know what We sweep the living room again, and that's when we notice something else has changed. The framed family photo on the mantle, the one with the shadow behind them, is different now. The father's face is blurred, smeared, as if someone pressed a thumb across the photo. But the mother, she looks terrified now. Her eyes widened, her smile gone. She's looking over her shoulder toward the basement door, and the shadow behind her isn't blurred anymore. It has a shape, a head, a torso, too many limbs. I turn to Naomi. Take a picture of that. She lifts her camera and freezes. Zak, it just moved. I look closer. The shadow in the photo now leans slightly forward toward the door. A posture-like anticipation. Whatever they sealed down there, I whisper. It watched them right until the end. The hallway lights flicker violently. A buzz rises in the walls like a swarm under the wallpaper. Then every light in the house shuts off at once. Pitch black. Elias's camera screen flickers on automatically, casting a faint glow. Something just passed behind you, he whispers. I whip around. There's nothing. Not physically, but the cold that hits my back is so sudden, so absolute, it makes my bones ache. A whisper curls around my ear, closer than breath. Open it. I step back, heart thudding, breath shaking. That voice wasn't mimicking me. It wasn't mimicking a child. It was something new, something learning. Naomi clicks her flashlight on. Her hand trembles. We need to find out what the family did, she says, how they tried to stop it. We search the kitchen next. Cabinets hang open. A rusted kettle sits on the stove filled with stale black water. But the table, that's what grabs our attention. A diary lies open, not untouched, freshly opened, as if someone placed it there for us. I move closer. Dust covers every inch of the house, but not this diary. The last written page is dated 1976. I read aloud, it wants the girl's voice, it wants the father's hands. It already has the mother's sleep. Soon it will have the boy's shape. Naomi wipes her eyes. What does that mean? I read the next line quietly. It learns what it touches. The next, we sealed the basement because it started crawling up through the floor at night. Then, if anyone finds this, do not answer it. Do not speak back. Do not let it hear your name. I stop reading because the last line is still wet, still glistening, still fresh. It listens through the walls now. Something lightly taps the far corner of the kitchen. Once, twice, a steady rhythm. Knock, 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 just like the basement door, but this sound is coming from inside the walls themselves. Naomi's voice cracks. Zak, it's not trapped down there anymore. I move toward the tapping. The wall vibrates under my palm. A slow pulse like a heartbeat syncing with mine. And from inside the wall, a new voice speaks. A whisper made of dirt and breath and hunger. Let me see your face. The floorboards under my feet shift. Not like settling wood. Like something moving beneath. Traveling, crawling, searching, heading toward the stairwell. It's not trying to escape the basement anymore. It's climbing up. A shadow passes under the floor. Fast, deliberate, predatory. Naomi shines her light toward the hall. Zak, it's coming up the stairs. We sprint out of the kitchen. Elias nearly drops his camera. The floor vibrates as something heavy drags itself upward. We reach the hallway. The basement door shakes violently. Not from pressure pushing outward, but from something climbing the other side of it, into the walls, into the floorboards, into the house. And the moment my boot hits the hallway, the thing whispers from every wall at once, Zak, you came back for me. Naomi screams. Elias hits the breaker on his equipment. And I realize something horrifying. It's not trying to get out anymore. It's already out. When the realization hit, it's already out the room, narrowed to a single motion, escape, or become part of the thing's vocabulary. My head felt hollow, like someone had scooped out the center of my thoughts and replaced it with static. We moved as one unit, but the house resisted in ways I had never experienced. Doors closed behind us before we hit the handles. Hallways that should have been straight bent by the light, steering our feet into corners we hadn't planned to meet. It was subtle at first, small manipulations, a rug that slid an inch, a floorboard that bowed in just the right place to trip you. Those tiny adjustments added up, steering us like puppets. The whispers now came from every surface, the plaster, the pipes, the hollow of the staircase. They mimicked our footfalls, our breath, the rhythm of our voices, until I could not trust any sound as my own. Keep your voice level, I said. Do not yell, do not answer, record everything, but don't play it back here. Elias clicked his camera steady. Naomi's hands were white along the strap of her recorder. We descended toward the living room, away from the basement door and the immediate pressure around it, but the house made sure we could not simply exit. It wanted an audience. At the threshold of the parlor, the air shifted, warm, metallic. The family portrait on the mantel that had already changed now moved in a way that broke the rules of physics. The father in the photograph turned his head a fraction to follow me, but not the rest of his body. The movement was a sliver of motion enough to imply agency, enough to tell me the thing wore faces like clothes. A sound like fingernails over a chalkboard threaded up my spine. It came from the piano in the corner, not someone playing the keys depressed on their own, one by one, an uneven lullaby that made my stomach curdle. Recorders picked the frequency, the same low undernote we'd heard at the hatch, so dense it showed as a solid color on the waveform, a negative space in audio. It wasn't sound as we know it, it was texture, it was pressure, it painted memory into the room. I realized then the house wasn't merely imitating voices. It composed them to do two things, recall and bind. By replaying a tone, a name, a syllable in a slightly altered way, it layered the memory until it could peel identity from the living like sap. Find any relics, I told them. Anything left by the family. If it feeds on identity, maybe objects anchor memory away from mimicry. We checked drawers, closets, the attic. In the attic we found a shoebox full of cassette tapes, labels, and a hand that trembled. Lullabies, 1,975. Daddy's voice, names to keep quiet. The last tape had been recorded at high speed, then slowed down, someone trying to hide what they'd said by distortion. I slipped a tape into my pocket. Back downstairs, the house's behavior intensified. Light bulbs popped in sequence from room to room. A wind or something behaving like wind rushed through the halls in narrow columns, blowing through our clothes while leaving other windows still. Images flashed in the edges of the cameras. A woman's silhouette in a doorway that vanishes when you look directly at the door. A small handprint on a dusty window pane where no hand could have been placed recently. We played one tape into a recorder in the parlor softly, just loud enough for the devices to pick up. It was static, and then a child's voice hummed a melody. The pitch was slightly wrong, as if the playback mechanism was underwater, but the house responded as if the child were present. The temperature dropped and the portrait man's smile slid into a rictus, as if he recognized whatever the tape coaxed out of the field. The thing learned faster than we did. It learned that recorded voices were safe ports where it could practice. It learned which frequencies made us flinch. It learned to sew fragments of our past into the seams of the house. We tried to be clinical about it, log the emergent patterns, place instruments, triangulate the source. But there's only so much science can hold when the observed behaves like a mind that sees you as a verb and not a noun. The more we watched, the more it watched back. And watching back meant personalization. It started using personal memories on purpose, not as accident. At around 2 in the morning, Naomi's recorder picked up a voice calling a nickname, one she had not told anyone for years. It was a private name from long before I ever met her, a syllable spoken only by someone who had held her as a child. She froze on the spot, her eyes wide and wet, as if the house had reached into a safe deposit box of her memory and pulled out a $10 bill with a finger. "Zak," she whispered, "don't let it say the whole thing." It's a simple command, but you'd be surprised how hard it is to obey when a word is presented like a dessert, bright, sweet, calling you in a voice you love. You want to answer because your entire body recognizes safety in that sound. We circle back to the basement hatch with new strategy. Traps of geometry, materials meant to frustrate a pattern that fed on recognition. Mirrors facing mirrors to reflect the mimicry back on itself, steel clamps to interrupt vibrational pathways, a Faraday-style wrap of conductive cloth to confound any electromagnetic tendencies. We braided the ledger's nonsense syllables into a tape loop, a meaningless mantra to press against the house's hunger for names. You cannot outscream a thing that eats voices, but you can starve it of the taste it wants most. At the hatch, the fabric of the air quivered. The chain slackened like a muscle loosening. Then a sound I will not forget, a child giggle, bright and sweet, coming from below. Then Naomi's name, elongated and affectionate in the same breath. It was both invitation and threat. I clipped the tape loop in place. I spoke in measured cadence, the nonsense syllable we devised not to name but to fill. We fed back to the house a noise that had no human history, a word without memory. We let it play on loop, an audio wall to confuse the pattern. For about 10 minutes, the house convulsed as if trying to interpret the feed. The air turned electric blue in the thermal. The negative audio field congealed and then started to splinter. The thing's voices began to fray into fragments, clumsy at the edges. It was the first sign of vulnerability. Then something else happened, unexpected, ugly, intimate. A whisper answered from inside the loop. Not a name, but a question in a cadence no human had used. Am I alone? It was a primitive sound, lonely, childlike, not a predator's probe, but the cry of a thing realizing it has hunger and someone who can hear that hunger. That question changed everything. If it felt alone, it might be coaxed, not by force, but by companionship. If it wanted fellowship, however distorted, then we had to become strategists of absence. Deny it company. Deny it the exchange that would teach it to speak in full. I realized the ledger's old notes weren't just warnings, they were misapplied strategies. The family had assumed they could anchor the thing with repeated names and lullabies, but those were offerings. They fed what needed to starve. So we did something else. We rewired the loop to transmit silence packets of white noise punctuated by the ledger's syllable at random intervals, but crucially, without cadence. It was speech without syntax. Language that denied grammar. We were trying to give the house something to chew on that would produce nothing of nutritional value. For an hour, the thing scraped and pushed. The house shuddered, then the sounds beneath the floor slowed, then folded inward like a concertina. The thermal negatives retreated. The photo on the mantle returned to stillness. The piano stilled mid-note. We did not celebrate. We only exhaled into the dark because we knew containment was temporary, a borrowed evening's peace, not a cure. As we packed our gear, Elias reviewed footage and froze on a single frame. The monitor showed a smear on the stairwell, like oil on water. Within that smear, for a single frame, exactly 1/30th of a second, there was a face. Not a human face exactly, but a scaffold of recognition. Cheeks, an ear, an eye. The face looked directly at the camera, and for that tick of time, it wore a human expression, a drawing of curiosity. That's what it does, Elias said, voice small. It practices faces. It practices faces to become convincing. It practices voices to be intimate. It practices names to be trusted. We left the farmhouse that morning with the loop still running and the hatch held down by weights. We left with a strategy that felt less like triumph and more like triage. Outside, the fields were an ocean of dead wheat, yellow and patient. A farmhouse should be a place where seasons are measured in grain yields, not in how often the house needs to be soothed. I looked back once, and for a moment the second floor window reflected an image that made my chest drop. A small shadow at the glass, head cocked, listening. It had watched us leave. It would learn from our absence. And memory, I realized, is a hungry thing that does not sleep. We drove away feeling small and tired, convinced that anchors and nonsense syllables had bought us time. That conviction lasted 2 days. On the third morning, Elias didn't show up at the shop. His phone went straight to voicemail. Naomi texted that she'd been up all night replaying footage and couldn't stop the loop in her head. I told myself to stay calm. I told myself we had contingency plans. But the human part of me, muscle and memory and habit, felt a prickle like cold fingers tracing the back of my skull. At noon, a plain envelope slid under the studio door. No return address. Inside, a single instant photo. The frame was cheap, the sunlight blown out. There we were, me, Naomi. Elias taken from a distance the night we packed our gear and left the farmhouse. In the porch window behind us, a small face watched. Cute, childlike, black eyes. The kind of face that makes you want to smile and then realize you're smiling at nothing. On the back of the Polaroid, in blocky handwriting, was a single line. We learned your faces. We learned your names. We like practice. I felt something go tight in my chest. Not fear alone, something deeper, like a ledger's page ripped out and carried off. We went back. This time we drove in silence. The wheat fields slid past like sleep. The farmhouse loomed. No lights. The anchors hummed faintly beneath the hatch. My rig's telemetry showed tiny, steadier vibrations. The ledger was still wrapped under the chains. The loop was still running, playing its nonsense syllable on an endless circle, so the thing below had to chew on meaningless sound. We planned for escalation. We put Faraday blankets over microphones, buried additional steel rebars threaded to ground, and set motion traps connected to high-intensity strobe lights. If it tried to imitate faces at close range, the sudden visual overload would, we hoped, break whatever fragile likeness it could form. We were preparing for a thing that had no body but could do everything a body could do except feel guilt. We split up. Naomi took the attic. Elias took the perimeter. I went to the parlor to check the loop in the ledger. My hands were steady. I told myself steady hands mattered. Inside the parlor, the air felt different, thicker, tasting of iron and old milk. The family portrait on the mantel tilted a degree as if a guest had shifted in its frame. The radio I'd left in a corner to feed white noise was dead. The loop was silent. Not broken, silent. A silence like a held breath, and then the house exhaled into the room with the sound of a child laughing, not joyful, but testing. My throat closed. "Naomi?" I called softly. No answer. I slipped off my jacket and crossed to the hatch. The nails in the cover's rim were cold under the palm of my hand. The ledger's binding bore the faint imprint of weight. For the first time since we wrapped it, I felt a pulse come through the leather like a small, steady knock. I unhooked one of the secondary anchor chains to reset the telemetry and nearly dropped to my knees. Beneath the ledger, someone had left a single object. A tiny ceramic shoe chipped, the glaze crazed with age. It wasn't there when we left. It had been placed on top of the ledger, at the center of the ring of salt. On the shoe's sole, scribbled in the same childish handwriting as the Polaroid, was a single word: practice. I didn't hear Naomi or Elias coming down the stairs. They moved soft and careful. Naomi's eyes were dark hollows. Elias's jaw ticked. "You placed it there," Naomi whispered. "No," I said, but the denial tasted thin. Elias checked the motion traps. "All set," he said. "No trips. No cameras triggered." It walked past everything. That's when the ceiling hummed and something sharp and instantaneous filled the parlor like static. The impression of someone standing right behind me, breathing into the lobe of my ear. A voice layered. Patient said my name the way a parent might when a kid is hiding and you already know where he is. "Zak." My knees wanted to buckle. They didn't. I forced my feet to hold. "Elias, check the attic," I said. "Naomi, secure the perimeter from the porch." We moved like people trained to act in crisis, but we were amateurs facing a mind that studies patterns for a living. Elias climbed the attic ladder. Naomi sat on the porch steps and spoke a nonsense phrase low and rhythmic to reinforce the anchor. I stayed by the hatch, hand on leather, ledger warm beneath the shoe. The loop was still dead. My telemetry showed the audio feed had stopped decades ago. Not because of failure, but because something had learned to wait. The waiting changed men. It makes you eager and scared in the same breath. From upstairs came a soft sound, footsteps that weren't to be traced to a shoe. Elias's shout cut the porch's low chant. He fell down the attic ladder with a thump and swore, clutching his shoulder. On his arm, a long red mark like a handprint glossed and dark. He stammered about a shadow that looked like his mother and then bent to the camera monitor. On the footage, a split-second frame showed a face leaning to the ladder, not fully formed. A scaffold of a face with too many small hands framed around the cheeks like petals. The face looked astonished at seeing its own hands. Elias whispered. It was practicing touching me. We braced. There were rules. Don't speak names, don't mirror, don't react like a friend, don't smile at the thing when it wears someone you love. We reinforced the circle with salt. added another layer of rebar, jammed the hatch with new clamps. But physical things matter little to an entity that has learned to ride language. Anchors will hold stone. They cannot hold the sound of a lullaby hummed in a bedroom in another town. We crossed the field again at dawn, pouring concrete slab after slab around the hatch. We wired the ledger into a Faraday cage and buried the whole package beneath 2 feet of poured cement. We left a mesh of sensor lines across the property, tied to local responders. We brought in a shaman for ritual, not because I believe in magic as a replacement for method, but because the human mind needs ritual sometimes to steady, and because the shaman had experience with patterns of hunger that mimic identity. For a week, nothing happened. The world seemed to heal its rip. The anchors reported only low-grade interference statistical flukes, but nothing like the energetic crescendos we'd recorded before. Naomi laughed in the kitchen over coffee. Elias joked about ghosts being picky eaters. I slept. We let our guard slip. The ledger taught us another lesson. Sleep is the place where things rewrite you. If you close your eyes and they speak your name, then when you open them, you might find someone else in your chair. It began with a text. Naomi's daughter, from another state, sent a fuzzy video. Her daughter said something silly and then asked very plainly, "Mommy, do you know the lady who says my name at night?" Naomi's face went white. She called her daughter. The phone in Naomi's hand was dead when she answered. The daughter had heard a voice at her bedroom window. "Mommy." It wasn't Naomi's voice. It was the thing's speech accurate enough to make a child look for a person who couldn't be there. We started to lose small things to practice. A sock left beside the bed that smelled of someone else's shampoo. A Polaroid on the studio desk with a figure in the background that was not our friend. A voicemail for me with my mother's laugh on it, slowed and pitched wrong. Each small theft was a lesson for the thing. Learn the cadence, learn the warmth. The shaman told us it wanted to be called. Not out loud necessarily, not in the old way. It wanted to be invited in by the small domestic comforts that make a voice, a friend, a lullaby, a nickname, the way a wife says your name in public and in bed. We fought back methodically. We hardened our speech. We taught our team to avoid names, to use initials only, to answer with facts and not affection. We eliminated photographs of loved ones from the studio walls. We left the ledger sealed and the concrete poured. We installed triple redundant alarms. It lasted 3 months. Then one Sunday night at 2:13 a.m., a voicemail came to the studio phone. A child's giggle, a small voice asking for milk. Then, unmistakably, my name the exact way my father said it when he was teaching me how to lift weights in the garage. I listened to that message 10 times, each place scraping something tender away until I realized the voice on the tape had not said my name at all. It had said our ledger syllable, shaped by a mouth that had tasted 1,000 names and selected one at random. In my head, I'd filled the sound with my father's cadence. It was practicing empathy. We responded by going back into the field and standing on the farmhouse porch in the raw cold, calling out nothing at all, no names, no memories, only the nonsense syllable turned into a driving drum. We shouted it into the wheat until our throats split. We were trying to starve it of the high sugars. The incantation of intimacy. When we left that morning, the porch light had been on. The ledger remained under the hatch, locked and poured, and for now the anchor telemetry showed quiet. 2 things are true and terrible. We did not stop it. We delayed it. And in the waiting, it changed. Months later, on a rainy afternoon, a delivery arrived at the studio. A small wooden shoe with a chip on the heel. No note, no return. Naomi handed it to me slowly, like a patient placing a diagnosis in your palms. On the shoe's sole, penciled in little letters, was a word I had never thought I'd see again. Practice. I felt the ledger's weight in my chest. We had contained movement beneath a foundation, but not the pattern. We had taught a hunger how to whisper with shape. There are things you can do to defend yourself against noise. Geometry, metal, silence. There are things no ledger can teach you. The look of someone you love when they enter a room but are not fully themselves. The hollowness of laughter with no history behind it. The hollow echo that remains when a name is used like a key. If you ever see a string of old nails hammered across a cellar door, if you hear a voice calling from dirt beneath a porch, do not answer. Don't feed it with your memory. Don't hand it the vocabulary it needs to dress itself in your face. We left the farmhouse that night, the anchor still humming and the concrete slab cold. The ledger stayed locked beneath, watched by steel and geometry. The farmhouse watched us leave. We drove out slow, and when I looked back, I thought I saw a shadow at the broken bay window, small and turned like a child listening to a radio. And somewhere under that slab, something practiced saying my name. It said it in syllables, in pitches, in the cadence of 1,000 stolen family voices, until my name became a thing it could wear. I learned finally how fragile a name could be. The basement should have stayed sealed. We learned that lesson the hard way. But there's a second lesson worth saying aloud. When the world whispers back with what you love most, the only safe answer is silence.